Anyway, I'm going to talk now to Paul Hocker, who's the play development manager at something called London Play. Good afternoon to you, Paul.
Hello, Robert. I love that. Something called London Play.
Well, tell us what London Play is.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're a charity. We've been around for about 15 years. And our objective is to make London a really great city for children to grow up in. And we try and get the best deal for London's young playing population, which in this day and age is not easy at the moment.
I mean, what are them? I mean, understandably, we have to take into account health and safety and all of those things. And I probably did grow up in an age, I'm sure I'm a bit older than you, when those concerns weren't quite to the fore. And you know, but there's a matter of balance, isn't there? And it's an important one to try and get right, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the playground in near King's Cross, and you mentioned Boris as well. He lives in Islington, and Islington's got 12 adventure playgrounds.
Has it still got 12?
Still got 12.
Fantastic.
And they are now, the local player association runs them, Islington Player Association. They run the 12 playgrounds and they're supported by a local authority, and the land that they sit on is protected in perpetuity for play. So
brilliant.
Islington's children have got a very good deal in terms of play. And some of them are award-winning playgrounds. We've given some of those playgrounds awards at London Play because they do give children the licence to take and manage risks, which is so important for children in their development. Otherwise, what sort of generation of children are we going to be rearing? You know, we won't have the entrepreneurs, the risk takers, unless they get a chance to hone those skills in childhood. They don't get to hone those skills in school. The stuff they learn at adventure playgrounds can't be learned at school.
When we talk about adventure playgrounds, and I think we've all got an image of a slightly kind of rickety wooden structure with some tyres involved, and you know, and kind of stuff like that. When do they date back to? When would the first of those have appeared, do you think?
The idea came, Germany and World War II has got a lot to answer for in terms of our adventure playgrounds. The first adventure playgrounds, the first one popped up in Denmark, and it was in 1943. Denmark was occupied by the Nazis, and at either end of the playground there were Nazi watchtowers, soldiers watching the children build this stuff. Like you say, they were called junk playgrounds because kids were given bits of wood, bits of timber, nails, hammers, and they just built and created their own structures. And the idea came over to Britain in the 40s, brought over by a lady called Lady Ellen of Hertswood. She brought the idea over here, and the first junk playgrounds, as they were called, the first one was in 1943 in Camberwell.
Wow. During the war, even?
During the war. Sorry, 1946 was the first.
So because, again, that really chimes with me, because in my mind, lots of the adventure playgrounds were on old bomb sites.
Exactly. Well, the weird thing for us is that we've got a playground engineer here, Max Muller. The clue's in the surname. He's a fantastic engineer, but lots of really great playgrounds around London. His grandfather was in the Luftwaffe, and he dropped bombs on London. So in a way, there was a bit of job creation going on in that family. The bomb sites that his grandfather made, Max now works on and develops these lovely playgrounds. And yeah, they were the original playground sites. That's where children played on the bomb sites, and. Now they're not. Now they are in. Councils find a little bit of land for a playground to develop, and we've got about 80. We've got the most staffed adventure playgrounds in the world in London.
Really? Because
80, yeah.
I'd assumed that they'd all, or nearly all, vanished. I knew there were some left, but I'd assumed that they'd nearly all vanished because of concerns about regulation and health and safety and all of that sort of stuff. But clearly, there's a lot out there. I mean. Have we got less than we had, or are we seeing a revival in them, or what?
No, there is. I mean, recently there was a survey done across the UK, and 2/3 of play provision has been cut. So councils are taking the easy option. They're cutting services to their citizens that can't vote, i.e. children. And we see some tragic losses across London. You might remember, your listeners will certainly remember, Battersea Park Adventure Playground, which... Yep. Had been in place for 40 years in Wandsworth, was an amazing exponent of children's culture, these beautiful, amazing wooden structures that have been evolving over time. supported by really high quality play stuff. That got cut last year, ripped out of the ground, and the council have replaced it with a really anodyne catalogue piece of play equipment. Requires no staff, will be vandalised and become unloved and derelict. So yeah, we have to protect our adventure playgrounds. They're really important, and there are, like I say, 80 across London in the neighbourhoods where they are most needed. So Lambeth has 15 adventure playgrounds, because this is an area where children don't have the money to attend soft play centres and whatever else, and adventure playgrounds are free. So a really valuable commodity.
Now, as you've said, I guess one of the points about adventure playgrounds is, to some degree, they need to be staffed. Whereas, I suppose, more conventional park playgrounds with their, as you said, slightly more anodyne kind of equipment don't. Is that the big factor here?
I think that's why councils think they can save money, but they're actually not in the long term saving money. If you go to an adventure playground and observe a play worker there, for instance, Glamis Adventure Playground, which was one of our adventure playgrounds of the year.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Mark from Glamis Adventure Playground now.
Fantastic play worker. The work that he and his team do goes way beyond just play. They're social workers, they're pedagogues, in Mark's case, he's a chef, he cooks for the local kids. They do so much more, and they can intervene in childhood and set children on a different path, a way more positive path, away from gangs, away from antisocial behaviour, and save the taxpayer money, because they're getting children into positive pathways. And we're saving on these children turning into adults that will cost society money in terms of, I don't know, prison. And other factors like that. So the play worker is an essential role. It's a really, really... Well, you were a play worker, Robert.
I was, yeah.
You were a great one.
Absolutely. And I loved it. And I think the kids loved it as well. My job, I worked for the Inner London Education Authority, which got abolished by Margaret Thatcher.
That's right.
And our role was, we were in certain Inner London schools. My area was around King's Cross. And we were in the schools after 3 o'clock, because a lot of the kids didn't have parents to go home to at that stage. And then we staffed the schools, or certain selected schools, throughout the long holidays. And we basically just played with the kids in the playground. And one of the things I learnt was that kids, loved a bit of rough and tumble, if you know what I mean. I mean, obviously it had to be controlled, and you don't want people getting hurt. That's the last thing you want. And I don't remember anyone ever getting seriously hurt. But the more, they loved the game of British Bulldog, for example, and all of that sort of stuff. It was just part of childhood for them.
Children have a keen sense of self-preservation, as do adults do. They don't want to deliberately hurt themselves. And we've got a film on our YouTube channel, which you and your listeners might find interesting. It's from the 1960s, and it shows an adventure playground in Notting Hill, and you will gasp. You will not believe the liberty these children had to... Well,
I probably won't gasp, because that was where my family were from, so I know that adventure playground very well indeed.
Well, if your listeners want to go and see what an adventure playground used to look like, and see how play provision has changed, and yet children haven't changed, they still want to take risks and have an adventure, then go to our YouTube channel and check it out, because it is absolutely...
What do you look for on that one? I'd like to see that myself.
Well, just type in... well, I tell you the best way to get to us. If we go to our Facebook page, we're at London Play, Facebook, you'll get a link to that. I've put it up there just now. So if your readers go to our Facebook page, they can get a link to the YouTube channel and see this adventure playground. It takes them about 10 seconds from clicking on the computer. And, like us while you're there. That'd be fabulous.
Have they changed adventure playgrounds? Have they had to become a bit more safety conscious and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, in the 90s, the kind of atmosphere, late 80s, 90s, the atmosphere changed around health and safety. It went from the workplace and sort of became entangled in children's play. So you got ridiculous kind of edicts around, pond depth, 6 inches of water was deemed a hazard, and you had to have a fence around it and all the rest of it. And it was on the back of a couple of high-profile tragedies, as it always is. A few isolated incidents seem to create a blanket kind of policy. But things are beginning to turn back in the other direction. The Brown government invested a lot of money in looking at risk in play and how important it was, and there was Play England, our partners are Play England, produced some really good policy documents on risk in play. So there was a bit of a turnaround, and Cameron himself has said children should have everyday adventures. Boris Johnson has said that children should get out more, parents should be less paranoid. Even this government is saying all right things, and we're doing a project funded by the Department of Health at the moment that are creating play streets across London, so getting children playing on their doorstep. So things are turning in the right direction, but it's very slow and there's not much money around. So
how do parents feel about letting their kids kind of loose on this sort of stuff, do you think?
Well, I'm a parent. I've got a 5-year-old boy, and I go to Berlin a lot with my son to visit friends, and Berlin's a great city for play. And their play structures out there dwarf ours in terms of the offer they give to children in terms of challenging them. And I see him climb up some cargo nets that are maybe, 20 feet high, and my heart is, in my throat. But he knows how far he wants to go.
They know their limits, kids,
exactly.
Don't they, usually?
Exactly. And most accidents on playgrounds are caused by two factors. One is either usually a dad encouraging their child to do something that the child doesn't actually want to do, and therefore there's an accident, or it's a mother that's hovering over them going, careful darling, and they lose their confidence and fall and they have an accident. Just leave kids alone. They can work it out for themselves. They know that the difference between taking a risk and a hazard. They're very different things.
Do you ever have issues with bigger kids? Because I remember there were often sort of scary moments when you were about 9 or 10 and suddenly this 15 and 16-year-old local kind of Herberts would turn up and you'd be on their choppers or whatever it was.
That's right, yeah.
And you'd be terrified and you'd vacate all the equipment or whatever.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, kids kind of self-regulate when it comes to the rules. When I played out as a kid, there were bigger kids out in the street, but there was always a bigger kid that was willing to stick up for you as well, and like I say, self-regulate and make sure that there wasn't bullying. And if there was bullying, well, okay, then you went home in tears, but you had learned something, and it made you a little bit more resilient next time. We don't want to raise a generation of children that are so protected and shielded and mollycoddled that as adults they don't have the skills and confidence to sort of survive in a very difficult world. We have to give them that resilience, and to give them resilience, the best way they can do that is through play and taking a few risks, measuring their own risks.
Now, as you've said, you've got a website and Facebook page and all of that. Give us all the details again in case people are interested.
Okay, here's the deal. Your first 10 listeners that go to our Facebook page and like us, I will send them one of our posters that is a map of London. So if it's a play map of London, all the hidden treasures. So if they do that, that's great. Our website is www.londonplay.org.uk. Plenty of stuff there, and they can find out about our adventure playgrounds in London and all the other stuff that we do to make sure that this is a city fit for children to grow up in.
I'll race you to the top of the rope swing, Paul.
All right, mate. Cheers,
lovely. That was Paul Hocker, Play Development Manager at London Play. What a lovely chap. And really, really interesting to hear there, I think, that he seems to think that I was going to say the pendulum, but perhaps the rope swing is more apt as a metaphor here, that the pendulum is swinging back a bit towards letting kids play in a more free environment and a slightly more risky environment, no doubt. But we do have to let kids learn about risk-taking, as he said.